This episode of Warp 5 is brought to you by Audible.com, offering more than 150,000 titles for your smartphone, tablet, or desktop. To get a free audiobook of your choice, visit audibletrial.com/trekfm. Also, help us keep Star Trek discussion coming to you each day by becoming a Trek FM patron through Patreon. Get access to exclusive content and become part of the team. You'll find all the details at patreon.com/trekfm. That's patreon.com/trekfm.
Hi, I'm Anthony Montgomery, Ensign Travis Mayweather on Star Trek Enterprise, and you're listening to Trek FM.
How we doing, Trip? Ready when you are. Prepare for warp.
Course laid in, sir. Request permission to get underway. Let's go.
Welcome, Boomers, to another episode of Warp 5, Trek FM's dedicated Enterprise show. I'm your host, Floyd Dorsey, and I'm joined in the conference room by a regular guest and Warp 5 second shift host, Brandon Shea Matala. Hey, Brandon, you gave me the command codes back, but for some reason, I'm only able to get in certain areas. Are you sure you gave me back the right codes?
Well, part of the ship is now under my control.
Uh-oh.
So you're gonna have to put up with me for a little longer. I think I'm the co-captain now.
Do I have the command codes for certain aspects, and you have the codes for like other aspects, or is this like how are we gonna do this?
Well, I think the command codes that I gave you are for the lavatory.
Oh, thanks. And photon torpedoes, right?
Yes, and the photon torpedoes. Yeah, you can have those too.
Very good.
You need to clean the lavatories. It's a mess in there.
So it's not really command codes, it's more like access codes.
Yeah.
I see. Nothing. Okay. Well, that's not really what I had in mind when, you said that you were going to take over that shift and let me go run that mission that we're not going to talk about.
Well, I put everybody under, and I don't know if you heard or not on the last episode, but I took some advice from Dr. Phlox there when he was in charge, and I was like walking around the ship naked for a while.
Oh man. You in Porthos?
Yes.
Yes. Nice. All right. Well, yeah, Boomers, joining Brandon and I is friend of the network and overall Trek expert, John Tenuto. Welcome back aboard, John.
Hey, thanks, guys.
Hey, I missed you last time. I was on this mission that we can't talk about for some section that we're not supposed to speak about. And you and Brandon, you really just knocked it out with the enemy mine and the Dawn comparison. That was great.
Thanks. Yeah, I got really excited. I live in Illinois, and there's a little, well, not little, it's a nice medium-sized show, a Hollywood collectible show. They have a huge one out in LA, but they do a smaller one here, and they just announced some of the guests, and one of them's Louis Gossett Jr., and I was like, hey, all right,
yes.
That's great. I was so excited. I was like, I'll bring a copy of the podcast with me and say, hey, look, we just talked about you.
Yes, that'd be awesome. Yes.
Yeah.
So for this episode, Boomers, we're going to be talking about a very fun aspect of Star Trek fandom. We're going to be talking about toys. And I am so glad that I have John and Brandon here with me, because I have to admit, I am a noob when it comes to toys. The Star Trek toys, I have no clue anything about it. So some of you are like, well, I don't know anything about toys. Well, hey, you and me are in the same boat here. I'm going to try to ask the questions that you need to hear. And then those of you that are very experienced, let's talk about that in the Babel conference when this show drops. So just given my experience, it's extremely limited. Like, I grew up watching the original Shatner, Nimoy, Spock, Star Trek. And it was during the early 70s, mid 70s, late 70s reruns at times. Well, there's this little thing they hit. It was called Star Wars. And I had Star Wars figures given to me at Christmas time and just birthdays and just around, but I was never given Star Trek figures. So my experience was I used to pretend that my Star Wars figures were Star Trek figures. And that was kind of my thing, you know. So, but here recently, actually, and in June, July, I actually bought the 30th anniversary Playmates original series figures off of eBay for a really, really good price, because my son actually asked, "Hey, we've got these Star Wars figures. What about Star Trek?" So I actually bought that. And for all of you collectors out there, I totally ripped that box open as soon as it got here. We've been playing with them. So I hear a lot of screeching of the records, but yeah, we totally played with those things. And that's been my experience with Star Trek toys. So I'm really interested to hear Brandon and John and what John actually has to share with us here. So Brandon, what's been your early experience, or your earliest experience with Star Trek toys, or maybe just your overall experience?
Well, I actually didn't have a lot of toys myself when I was a kid for Star Trek toys, but I did have some Star Wars ones, and I got to say I'm disappointed because we sold them at a garage sale. I had a Millennium Falcon, and I had like a couple other really cool things. Like, what's that? The ice speeder from Hoth.
Oh,
like
right.
the one that they flew around in. I had that as well.
That kind of looked like a flying squirrel.
Right. But I had those, and I ended up selling them at a garage sale, and I bet you they would have been worth a fortune now, because those were like original run toys. You know, so
Yeah.
so now what I have for toys, like I collect the Star Trek starships from Eagle Moss.
Okay.
And I bought off of used Regina. The city I'm in is Regina. A full collection of the first wave of the Deep Space Nine action figures. And they're all still in the box, so I have those hanging on my wall right now. So now I'm too old to play with the toys, and my toys are hanging on the walls.
Right. So, John, what was your earliest Star Trek toy experience that you can recall?
Well, I kind of come into Star Trek backwards in a way from the toys into the show. I mean, I was about 1975. You know, as a little kid, and you know, I was aware of Star Trek, but my mom had gone to something called Montgomery Ward's Bargain Basement, which was a kind of precursor to, you know, outlet stores for Montgomery Wards, where they would have all their, you know, holdover items. And I you know, I had been a fan of Planet of the Apes, and I had those toys, and Star Wars wasn't out yet, but you know, would join that world too. But I think because my mom thought that I like science fiction, which I did, for Christmas they bought me the Mego bridge and the you know, 4 of the figures and from the Mego line, and that playing with that day got me very, very interested in Star Trek, and from there I started to explore the show. So for me, the toys were kind of one of the big ways that I was inspired to really get into that world, and since then I haven't stopped. I you know, I still collect. I collect as much as I can with all kinds of the toys, and it's become a family hobby. So my son and my wife, we all are involved in that, and we, you know, it's one of the fun things of going to conventions is hitting up the dealer's room and seeing, you know, if I can find 1 or 2. I only need like 4 of the Playmates toys that are in the line, and you know, I like to have holes in the collection because I like to have something to look for. So, you know, I'm hopeful that there'll be Discovery toys. I'm sure there will be, and so, you know, for me, it's just been you know, really a lifelong fascination and love with them. And then we spent our time, you know, we shifted into looking at it a little bit more academically, and you know, taking a look at the history of it and the meaning of it. And so it's been something that's moved into just my teaching too.
You actually have done a full, what do you call it when you do a presentation at the library? Just a presentation?
Yeah, I mean, we do, you know, especially for creation entertainment, but also for local libraries. We do presentations on a lot of different topics, everything from the Amish to, you know, presidents, and, you know, just anything really, and that we research. But most of what we do is either in the world of Star Wars or I would say 70% in the world of Star Trek, and we do everything from making of the show. Really, a lot of our goal is to try to get people to really to share with fellow fans the contributions of the behind the scenes artists, the really extraordinary, talented people who, you know, their names are in the credits maybe, but, you know, how much Star Trek. Luckily, people pay a lot of attention to behind the scenes people, but the sort of the general fan or the casual fan may not be as familiar with the work of people like Doug Drexler, or just Gary Hutzel or anybody like that. And so we love to share what these amazing artists did, but we also have a series of talks, the one for each of the shows, and then also one that's based on the movies, and we look at the history of the toy lines, and everything from how the toys were used in certain episodes to just fun facts about the toys, maybe even highlighting some of the people who designed the toys and their contributions to Star Trek that way, and sometimes how the toys wind up even influencing fans' perceptions of things, or it becomes a way for us to at least have a model of something that only existed by name, or we like, for example, for Enterprise, there's a model kit of the refit NX-01, and done with Doug Drexler's supervision and all of that. And so, I mean, it's sort of a way for Star Trek to kind of continue past when the show is on too. So we look at all those kinds of issues. So it's a lot of fun, and we got a lot of exclusive pictures and behind the scene images of the making the toys, and we like to share that with people.
Just kind of set up some context for us, like early toys working our way up to Enterprise. You had mentioned, I think you mentioned Mego. Is that the earliest like action figures?
What's interesting is Star Trek, as soon as Star Trek was on TV, there were toys. And Mego comes in around 1974, 1975. Depends on what region of the country you were in. But the very first company to really make Star Trek toys was a toy company named Remco. And that was way back in 1967. So these toys were out while the show was on. They weren't really faithful to the show. Basically, what they did was they took a lot of their old toys and slapped the word Star Trek on the box and put the word Astro in front of it. So you got like the Star Trek Astro Copter and the Star Trek Astro Cruiser and the Star Trek Astro Tank. And I mean, all these toys that never existed in the show. They were sort of the first toy line, but they were a big toy company. They would eventually be bought out in 1974 by a company named Azrak Hamway. And Azrak Hamway was really famous for peg toys. You go into grocery stores or whatever, and they were there for 99 cents, 50 cents, and you got a little cheap plastic toy. But they wanted the Star Trek license, and they kind of got it through Remco's possession of it. And so they released what's considered to be the very first genuine Star Trek action figures, which were, believe it or not, if you can imagine this, a parachuting Kirk and Spock. So they were Kirk and Spock, and you'd throw it up in the air, and this plastic parachute would come out. And so, it's silly now, but I think they traveled through time and they watched Star Trek 2009 and saw that there would be a parachuting Kirk.
I was about to say, that's a little before its time, right?
I remember that episode. That was the episode when they went to Vietnam.
Yeah, right. The time travel episode. And so those were the sort of the two companies. The line that, in a way, I think is really very important because it speaks to kind of Star Trek coming back in the mainstream, was the Mego line. So Mego was a company that was founded in 1954 by D. David Abrams and his wife Madeline Abrams, and they were like Azrak Hamway. They were a rack toy company really when they started. But in the 70s, their son Marty sort of took over the company, and he changed the concept of what the company was, and he made it a licensed kind of action figure company. So they did the world's greatest superheroes. They did a lot of sort of sci-fi superhero kind of properties. And then the fact that they wanted Star Trek said something. So this is, 1974, 75. Star Trek is on TV. It's in some markets beating first-run TV shows. It's kind of gone mainstream. You have shows like Sanford and Son are mentioning Star Trek. Saturday Night Live is mentioning Star Trek, and the conventions have kind of become what they were. And so for $5,000, they get the license to Star Trek, and they sold 12 million toys in 12 million action figures in 1975, and 16 million worth in 76.
Oh man!
So that really was sort of the big toy company. Now Mego was offered Star Wars and said no. And unfortunately then went bankrupt because Star Wars became the big hot property for Kenner. And so then the Star Trek would wind up going to various toy lines throughout, through the 70s. Now Mego did do the action figures for Star Trek: The Motion Picture, but that would really be the last one. Wrath of Khan didn't have action figures initially. That wouldn't come for 25 years, really, that you got a whole line. There were a few Playmates ones in the 90s from Wrath of Khan, but really an expansive line waited until 25 years later when Diamond Select Toys had the line. And then they did everybody. They did Terrell, Khan, everyone. And but you had different companies. Galoob did the license for a while in the mid 80s. You had Ertl did action figures for Star Trek 3. There were no Star Trek 4. One of the weird things about Star Trek toy lines is you get something like Star Trek: The Motion Picture, which was massively merchandised, but it didn't sell well. So 2, which was exceptionally popular, didn't get a whole lot of merchandise. But then 3 gets action figures, but those don't sell well. So it's sort of like this, the 2, 4, and 6 never got figures, until later, much later. And but I think in a way, was the line that's the most prolific line was Playmates Toys. Playmates Toys had the license from 92 all the way till 2000, and then they had it in 2009 for the J.J. Abrams movies. And in that time period, they produced 367 4-inch figures. They produced 31 6-inch figures. They had 89 9-inch figures. They had 31 12-inch figures, in addition to play sets, role-playing toys, ships. And the amazing thing about their line, not to knock the Star Wars line because I like it, but in the Star Wars line, you do get Luke Skywalker sort of in the same costume 100 times. The sculpts are better. They change things around a little bit. They improve it, but it's him in the same costume 100 times. And then they do them in other costumes too. The 367 Playmates toys were almost always unique costumes. So there are like 12 different Worfs, and they're really different. So that was a really fun and important line that lasted a long time. It was kind of done in by the changing of the market. Stores started to want to have exclusives. Fans don't really, I think the industry thinks fans like exclusives, but for completists, we don't like exclusives. Because if you want to get the whole line and you can't get that exclusive, it actually encourages you to stop collecting the line if you're a completist. And that's really what happened in a way with Playmates Toys. They were producing in some runs 100,000 copies of like characters like Picard, and they were selling. Well, they decided to come out with something called the 1701 line, which is always cute. Retailers always want to do 1701, or they make the price $17.01, and that's real cute. Except when you have 100,000 people who want a figure and you're only releasing 1701 of that figure, you're disappointing a lot of completists. And that was a bit of a mistake. They tried to fix that problem by releasing those same figures in a boxed set that wasn't limited, but by then there are other factors, of course, too, the changing world of electronics and toys and all that. But unfortunately, they lost their license, or they decided not to go on with their license, and I should say. And it was picked up with the current licensee, one of the current licensees, which is originally a company called Art Asylum, and now Diamond Select Toys purchased Art Asylum, and they're the ones that are kind of doing figures now. There's also other companies that are doing action figures as well, and toys. So you get kind of a very fast history there, maybe not so fast history of Star Trek toys.
Well, I've got to say, given my limited experience and just knowledge of it, when I see the Art Asylum and the Diamond Select, those seem to be more detailed. Like they seem to be a little higher quality. Is that true, or is that just?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Well, you know what it is? It's a change there's a change in technology. and in terms of figures can look better because they can sculpt at a smaller scale. But the Diamond Select toy line is really, I mean, you can play with them for sure, but they're not made for kids' hands, right? The Playmates lines were made for kids' hands. That's what the genius was of the Star Wars line, right? You take enormous toys like G.I. Joe, $6 Million Man, and you shrink them down to kid-size, hand-sized toys. Mm-hmm. And that was brilliant. It also allowed for ships and play sets to be smaller, fit on the store shelves. I mean, it was just genius, and that really radically transformed the whole toy industry. And so when toys are made for kids, they tend to be smaller like that, 3 1/4 inch, 4 inch. But the Diamond Select toy line is really more for collectors. The figures are heavier, their sculpts are beautiful. Some of the Enterprise sculpts are just amazing. If you could animate Scott Bakula's action figure, you would think it was Scott Bakula. It was amazing. And so it is a different kind of line. They're also bigger. They're generally around 7 inches, and they come with more accessories, and they're really designed more to sit on your desk or to be displayed. Of course, you can play with them, but they're not really as kid friendly, for that reason. In fact, some of them don't even move. I mean, they've been releasing kind of lately almost statues. They're beautiful though, and some neat ones. They did Troy and her kind of like cheerleader scant outfit from the first season from the first episode, really, of Next Generation. And so that's also a very diverse line. I mean, the Art Asylum. The line has done almost 200 figures. I mean, it's been a lot. So they're a very popular line as well, Diamond Select and Art Asylum.
So Enterprise action figures by Art Asylum, Diamond Select, I saw those. Like, you don't really see those like at Walmart or Target or somewhere like that. Those are more like at game stores or at record company or record stores. I think the first ones that I saw were like at a Hastings. It's got like records and games and video games and things like that. It's kind of a niche collector's sort of thing. And I saw those, and I really wanted to maybe get those because they each came with a piece of the bridge. They, like Bakula's or Archer came with the chair, and then they each had their own piece of the bridge that was their station. I guess you could put it all together. And
yeah, they had the Art Asylum, which was the initial company. They produced their first Enterprise line. It was a Broken Bow line. Enterprise premieres September 26th, 2001, I think it is. And then so the following autumn, we kind of get our first. It takes about a year, but the first figures start showing up, and you get. They had Jonathan Archer, T'Pol, Mayweather, Reed, Silic, and Klang were the original figures there. They also did an away team line, a second line. Now, that first line was in toy stores, but it didn't sell really well. And that's why they all moved to these sort of specialty stores. Mm-hmm. And, Suncoast and stores like that, that were around back then. And then they did an away team line where they were in their environmental suits. And that's the only way you can get a Hoshi. Hoshi was only released in her environmental suit. And Tucker was only released in his environmental suit in that line, but there was an exclusive to News Force Comics that has him in his regular outfit. So you can get him, but it wasn't part of sort of the normal line. It was part of like a 6,000 figure limited edition for things like New Force. And there were different there was a Save Enterprise one, if you remember the Save Enterprise campaign, that were signed by Connor Trenier to try to save Enterprise and all that. So, I mean, I think Gear for Games, Australian companies, Vegas, different locations had like this exclusive version of Charles Tucker. And they were going to produce a Hoshi and Phlox in regular outfits, but they never did. Because the line kind of petered out after that. But they did do 3 deluxe figures, which is what Floyd was talking about with where you got the character and a piece of the bridge. And a very frustratingly, the fourth and final piece, which was Travis, was never made. And so we all look at our incomplete bridge and tear up when we look at it. But it was really cool because they were electronic, so they made sounds. They were incredibly faithful.
Yes.
If you take a picture of Herman Zimmerman's real set designs of the comm panels, and then you compare it to, I mean, they put the buttons in the right spot. I mean, it was a beautiful, beautiful set, and they had Archer, Reed, and T'Pol, and then you were going to get Travis. And they only did the prototype. There were some prototypes and a couple of figures made, but they never released them. And but that was sort of the big action figure line was Art Asylum, and they also did incredibly beautiful, so beautiful they just re-released it. Diamond Select Toys just redid it. Just amazing little Enterprise NX-01 toy ship, and it had electronics. It was beautiful, and it lit up. It was really one of the finest. I mean, not only is Doug Drexler's design great, but I mean, it was a great toy. And they did really neat kind of role-playing sets. They had a phaser and a communicator, and the phaser was cool because it opened up like on the show, and you had to pull the thing in and out to repower it up. It was really a well done line. It just didn't sell, unfortunately. By that time, toys and in that regard, especially with Star Trek, they weren't doing as well.
Going back to that one with the bridge, so about what time frame was that they were creating that, and why do you think it was that they never finished with Travis to finish that set?
Well, they released those in November of 2002 is when they started releasing the deluxe figures, they called them, and that went all the way through the winter period. Really by January 2002, I'm sorry, by like summer 2000, late 2002, that the line was just they realized the line was not working, and they kind of let the line go. So it was really a cost thing. You know, they didn't sell anywhere near the figures they had intended to sell, and despite the fact that some of these figures, I mean, Shran is great. The Nausicaan Captain, they did a Nausicaan Captain from the episode Fortunate Son, and it's so good. I mean, the sculpt is amazing, and really the figures really look like them. I mean, it was an exceptionally well done line. And the company, Art Asylum, the company, it was started by a woman named Donna Saldana and a guy named Digger Mesh, and they were really, I mean, they were artists, and they were one of the first companies to really start using digital scanning. So they were based on the scans of the actors, and they just, it was a great line, but it just didn't sell well enough.
I've looked at them. Like, I didn't buy one, and I was like, I really want to buy one. And I'm telling my little boys, they were little, and I'm like, hey, you want one? You want a Star Trek toy? And they, no. And then finally, my youngest son said, hey, these Star Wars figures are awesome. Do they have Star Trek toys? Then I can't find them, But I picked those up, the ones that you're talking about, the special deluxe, and looked at them and like really looked at them in the store. Those are so real looking. I mean, they look so real. They look like you said, like an animated version of Scott Bakula or an animated version of any of the characters. They were so detailed.
They were so good that like their phase pistol that they made was so faithful to the original that they actually used the phase pistol in episodes. So if fellow fans are familiar with the episode United, where you had sort of the Romulan drone ship, and you have Malcolm and Trip are stuck on this drone ship that's being remotely controlled by Admiral Valdor. There's a sequence where they kind of like trick him. Reed tricks him by blowing up, his phase pistol, I should say. And the props, the hero props, were $2,500 each, right? So they're not going to blow up a $2,500 prop, especially on a show that at that time they were really limited in their budget, because they were struggling a bit, and they were, so they used the Art Asylum, they called it Trek Tech phase pistol. So when you see him putting it down, they do a close-up shot of it. That's the toy. Now they repainted it a little bit, and souped it up a little bit, but it's the toy. And everything, the play sets, the action figures, everything was really faithful in that line, and it really deserved kind of a better fate than what it got. It would have been great had they been able to go on and continue to do, to get an Eric Soong figure or something. I mean, it would have been really great if they had been able to go on with that.
Or you get the Klingon with the ridges, and then they've got like a special something where the ridges like flatten out, right?
Swap his head out, do like a swap.
Exactly.
That would be great. Yeah.
So how do we get the right licenses to make these toys, John?
How do we? Well,
Yeah.
we need money. We need money first, and Star Trek is such a important property. They're very, it's not like, if you go back, if somebody owned a property, the toys were just sort of this side thing, and there wasn't as much concern about it. But, at CBS and Paramount, particularly CBS, they're, which is really the ones that license out Star Trek. They're very concerned that the products are high quality, that they represent the fans well, that they're not knockoffs, that they're not cheap looking. I mean, all of that. So, part of the problem is with licensees is not only do you have to pay for the license, but you have to be able to make a quality product and really great action figures. And now the nice thing about Enterprise is that wasn't the only line, and that wasn't the only toy, and we're still getting stuff. And I think it's a good example of why, as particularly as Enterprise really gets rediscovered on Netflix and on kind of streaming services and CBS All Access and all that, because that show was it was in a way it was I hate the word binge watching because that's just it's kind of a weird phrase, but that's an illness. But when people sit down and they watch shows all in a row, I don't know how you say it, but Enterprise was almost made for that, particularly when it hits its third and fourth year. And so it feels like it belongs in today's world. And so we're getting new fans. So the nice thing is that there's still items that are coming out, and there were other companies even back then. So Hallmark Hallmark has had one of the longest relationships with Star Trek. They started producing Star Trek Christmas ornaments in 1991, paving the way for Star Wars ornaments and kind of really the pop culture world of ornaments. The Enterprise that they released in 1991, they weren't sure whether people wanted Star Trek Christmas ornaments. So that ornament still today goes for $300, $400, or $500 because they only produced so few of them, and they sold out some stores within hours, all stores within days.
Wow.
And it was really, really, so they've done more than 70 ornaments. And again, some of those are featured in shows. So if you're a fan of Voyager and you watch the episode Prophecy, where you had them sort of building their baby's crib and getting the mobile ready, B'Elanna and Tom, what you see above the little ships for the mobiles, a few of those are Lynn Norton's, who's the artist for Hallmark. Those were his ships, and they repainted them. Or if you remember the episode where we find out that Carrie, he dies in that episode, and we find out that Carrie, Friendship won, and that Joe Carey loved to build little ships, and he has a Voyager inside a bottle. That's a Hallmark ornament. So and like in Voyager when the episode Scorpion, where Kes is having those visions of the Borg being killed in piles by species 8472, those are Playmates action figures. So I mean, they've used toys in several episodes, and that relationship actually goes all the way back to the original Star Trek. AMT, the model company, and again, the genius and cost saving of the original show. Gene Roddenberry struck a deal with AMT, aluminum model company, that they were did model ships and things like that. If they would build a life-size version of the Galileo, which is what you see in Galileo 7 and Star Trek, that was built by a toy company, they could have the license to do Star Trek model ships for free.
Wow.
So, I mean, and you see some of the models in the original show. So that is a very long relationship with those toys. But you have toy companies or collectible companies like Hallmark producing items all the way until the mid 2000s. You get things like USAopoly. A lot of times with Enterprise now, it's part of like a franchise collection of some kind, right? So if it's like Diamond Select Toys has these little mini mates that are kind of like brick toys, and they released a exclusive version of a Xindi and Archer together with one another, and that version was part of like a franchise. It was like all the captains with their main enemy. So you get that a lot with Enterprise, where it's kind of included along with other things, but you're still getting stuff coming out like model ships and things like that. And of course, they have a lot of Enterprise represented in the Eagle Moss collection. So it really is a testament to the popularity of this show that it's been canceled for 10 years and they're still making items.
Yeah, they do have some really cool ships in the Eagle Moss collection for sure. And then it's branching out, not just toys, but I mean, we're still getting lots of cool stuff. Like last year for the 50th, we had those Australian like dollar coins, like whatever the dollar value was, and they had Archer on one of them.
Yeah, Perth Mint. They did an Archer coin, an Enterprise NX-01 coin, and they were really cool. If you bought the two of them together in a set, they came with a really cool like transporter looking display box and everything. So they're saying Perth Mint is still releasing Star Trek coins. So I'm hopeful that they did a Spock. I'm hopeful they do first officers, and we'll have a T'Pol coin maybe. I don't know, but I mean, you get companies like Anavos has and it has released the Enterprise jacket, the flight jacket. You've got that was in 2014. I mean, that was just a couple years ago. Or La La Land has released the Enterprise music, two disc sets, I think, two different sets of the music. So
4-disc sets, yeah.
Yeah, 2 4-disc sets. So there's a lot of great stuff that's coming out from a lot of different companies. I mean, what's great about Eagle Moss is they release ships that you wouldn't get otherwise. Like you get the ECS Fortunate from them, from that episode Fortunate Son. And that's great because you can just go, you get the Tholian ship from Enterprise, you get the Romulan drone ship from Enterprise, and it's a nice scale, and they can do more ships than you might get if they were doing like big giant electronic toy ships.
John, this I've got to say, I honestly didn't know. I mean, I've seen a little bit when I was going in certain stores, and I would see some things around, but I really didn't know that much about the toys, and I really didn't know what was offered. But yeah, I was just thinking about it. You get to thinking about toys, you think of action figures, but then you've got a whole other category of ships, and then you've got a whole other category of role playing. So like even for the Enterprise, they had, like you said, the amazing phase pistol that also came with a communicator. And did that come with a like one of Archer's versions of the tricorder or not? Do you know?
No, they never did unfortunately, at least to my recollection, they never did that. That was sort of a 2-pack with the communicator and the phase pistol. That would have been great had they done that. But they did do the tricorder for other shows, not Art Asylum, but Playmates. So there was some really nice, really cool tricorders done for the motion picture and stuff like that by Playmates. For Diamond Select Toys and Art Asylum, they did do the phasers from the original show. They did do phaser from Star Trek II. They did do the tricorders, a lot of different kinds of tricorders from the original show. In fact, Enterprise, in the episode In a Mirror Darkly, when you see them walking around with the original series phasers, because they're on the Defiant, that has crossed over into the Mirror universe, those the phasers that you see from the original show are actually Diamond Select Toy Art Asylum.
Yep. And my son, he again in that this summer he was like, "Hey, I want some of that." And then there was a store that was selling out, and we're like, "Let's go check it out." He finds one of those Diamond Select Toss phasers, and he bought it. And
they've done a lot of great stuff. They did the communicator from Star Trek 2. I mean, just like really neat, which is just so clunky, and it's great. It's such a great item, because it's kind of like, it looks like it even belongs like before the original show. It's just a great item, and so lots of. I mean, there's so many different things you could collect. That's one of the nice things about Star Trek. I mean, if you're into something, you may have run into a collectible for Enterprise that you like. So I mean, there's a company called Oriental Furniture has these 5-foot tall Enterprise like room dividers. And they released that in 2012. And so, like, if you're a person who enjoys, decorating, or you want to decorate, but you want to have something you could fold up and put away, and they're huge. They're really great. And there's just so many different things that a person could collect. They had little Johnny Lightning ships. There's trading cards. Enterprise is often represented in trading cards even today with Rittenhouse Archives, who does a really great line of cards, and especially when they do, again, franchise themed card sets, you always get Enterprise included in there, and you can get the autographs, which is great because they're authentic, that come with those card sets. There hasn't been a lot of Enterprise comic books. The Phlox was featured in the IDW comic from July 2014, where they had the Tricorder X Prize. They did like a comic to go along with that, and Enterprise was included in there. But now that they have the Waypoint comic, you may be getting Enterprise. That would be great if they did some Enterprise stories.
There actually is. We've heard that it's the next issue. Issue 4 is going to have an Enterprise comic.
That's awesome. That's great. Because that was one thing that was sort of sad. At that time, when Enterprise was on, there really wasn't a Star Trek comic being produced. So we really never really got like a nice long run of, 20, 30, 40, 50 issues of Enterprise comics like we did really for every other show.
All right. Well, John, Brandon, what advice would you maybe give a listener that's wanting to get started on collecting, or maybe a veteran, that is looking for something really unique? Like what's some advice that you might give?
Save up, buy the expensive stuff.
Well, I think part of it is, people collect kind of based on their personality. So some people aren't completists. Some people are. And I think the first thing to kind of do is just recognize what kind of collector you are and be okay with it. If you're a completist and like I am, and I have compulsions to complete, not that I have to do it right now, but it's something that I always hope to do. And that's part of the fun. To finish a collection, or to do that. And it's fun to hunt with the family for items and finish a collection. So I think, part of it is recognizing what kind of collector you are, and also what you're interested in. There's so many different Star Trek things to collect, that, if I could go back and tell my younger self, I might say, well, you might want to focus on this or that. I have a lot of items that are nice, but I don't really, I have them, and I don't know, really why I have them anymore, but except that I love Star Trek, and it's like cutting off an arm, so I'm not going to do that. But, I would wish I had the space for the things that I really enjoy. I really love action figures. I love the ships. But you can get 4, 5, 6 different versions of the same ship, and it's sort of like, well, do I really need 5, 6 different versions of it? So part of it is, I think, maybe if you're just sort of starting out, figure out what kind of collector you are, be okay with that. Zoom in on a particular kind of collectible. You want to collect autographs, you want to collect trading cards, you want to collect action figures, you want to collect a particular character across many different types of items. And then in terms of where to get them, a really great place to get older stuff are Star Trek conventions or toy shows or comic book shows. Some of the big ones like Wizard World, you're going to find lots of Star Trek toys. But sometimes you find them at your local small, pay $1, get in comic book convention. And also I think to have a list with you, because like for example, I really love the fan sets. They're brand new. They're really cool pins, so it's kind of retro in the sense that they're pins, but they're doing some really cool stuff like augmented reality pins. I mean, they're really neat. And they're doing pins of characters that's never had collectibles before. And some of them are Enterprise pins. And there's so many in the collection, and I want to get them all. And occasionally I'll forget which one I have or don't have. I think I have one, I don't have. So I always tell people too, if you can, keep a checklist on your phone, because you never know when you're going to need it. You never know, like, you go to a Beanie Baby show for some reason, and you find out there's Star Trek collectibles there, and you wish you had your list. So those would be just my bits of advice. Know who you are as a collector. Figure out what it is particularly you want to collect. Keep a checklist with you. And make it a part of your budget so that you don't overspend, and you don't feel guilty when you do spend. You put away a little bit, for that. You build it up, and you have the money to spend on it for fun. My dad, who was a very practical man, always told me, my dad would always say, he'd say, "Oh, that's really nice. How much that cost?" But he one of the things he told me is, you could be spending. I mean, he didn't understand it per se, but he told me that, you could be spending your money on gambling or alcohol or something. I'd rather you spend your money on Star Trek toys. So, I think it's a great way to spend, a great hobby to have and a great way to spend time with family.
Yeah, that's some really good advice. My collecting, like the things that I collect the novels. Like, I still physically buy all the Star Trek novels myself. I collect the Eaglemoss ships, and I collect the music. So I've got all the soundtracks. I mean, when I go to conventions, I try and get a few autographs. But I mean, the autographs, to me, they're a little too pricey. I mean, I think that's a lot of money for autographs. But $25 for a ship or $25 for an autograph, I think I'd rather have the ship.
And that's what the cool thing is, right? I mean, one of the things we talk about in the talks is that if you really love Star Trek ships, let's say, you could get like the Johnny Lightning line, even that they don't make any new ones with that, or the Eaglemoss lines, which are not that expensive, or you can get QMX $4,000 ships. So the nice thing about Star Trek is there's stuff available for all kinds of budgets, all across the spectrum of that. And so just narrowing in something like the Eaglemoss collection, that's a commitment, to get all of those. But when you're focused like that, you can do that because you're putting your energy and your resources into one direction.
Very good. That's great advice. The list on your phone, that's a great advice, because you're right. You'll be places and you'll see something, and it won't expect that this thing was around the corner. I was at a board game shop and did not expect to turn the corner and see all this Diamond Select toys. I did not expect it. So that's great advice.
I was just going to tell a similar story. I was at a comic book store, and a guy said, "Hey, you like Star Trek, don't you?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I got all these old Playmates toys someone brought in. I'll give them to you for $1 each." And I said, "Okay." And but I didn't want to take all of them, and I didn't want to be greedy. But I didn't have my list with me, and one of the figures was called Redemption Data, inappropriately named figure because it has him in red, and it wasn't in that episode that he was in red. But anyway, I think he never wears red, and he still wears his yellow when he's captain of the other ship. And so but that was like a big deal, that figure, and that was a figure that went for $100, $200 at one time. I don't think you'd pay that now, but and I bought it for $1, and I told the guy, I think this figure is worth a lot more money, but in my list I couldn't confirm anything. He said he didn't care. He told me everything was $1, and I was going to pay only $1. And so it was really nice. So in that regard, not having my list helped me, but I didn't know really which ones to get or which ones not to get. You never know. I mean, even like the books, I love the books too. I keep a list of the books because sometimes you forget, like, especially the older ones maybe that I don't have all of, you forget, did I ever buy that one? Do I have that one? And having a list is really helpful.
So, John, if our listeners are looking for ideas for future gift lists, how can they contact you or follow you?
I'm on Facebook. If people would like, you just search John Tenuto and send me a friend request. And or if you'd like, you can always email me through the College of Lake County where I teach. And it's just my first initial J and my last name Tenuto, and then it's at CLC Illinois with Illinois spelled out .edu. If you just go to the CLC website, College of Lake County website, you just put my name in, I'm sure I pop up some way on there. Although they may not be good for recruiting. I don't know, I scare people if they see me. But that's a great way to get in touch with me.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming aboard the NX01 again. Yeah, this was an education for me. I had no idea, like even the history or even what was coming around the corner. So thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. I appreciate what you guys are doing to keep Enterprise out there and keep talking about it. So thank you very much.
Enterprise Toys is not the only thing we've been talking about on Trek FM this week. So here's what else you may have missed elsewhere on the network.
Previously on Trek.fm, Warp 5.
Even though we lost tons of money, we were like, phew. Now we can stop and think.
Writer strikes are funny things. Sometimes you get season 7 of 24, and sometimes you get Shades of Grey.
I knew you were going to say that.
Literary Treks.
I think one of the things in total, just looking at the footage, was you feel like you're there. You're a fly in the wall. It takes you back to 1960s television production. You're behind the camera. You're watching the actors. You're there.
Meta Treks.
Quark speak and spells would be highly profitable.
It's all the rage on Ferenginar. I hear it's next year's big Christmas gift.
Last year was Tickle Me Worf. This year it's
Quark speak and spells.
And that's what else is happening on Trek.fm.
Check out these shows and find out what we're talking about in your favorite corner of the Star Trek universe. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts, iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or you can always go to our website and get the RSS link or the MP3 file. And if you're an Apple user, please hit that subscribe button. And while you're there, if you could leave us a star review and a rating, that would be great. And speaking of star rating and review, we're recording this. It's already into 2017, and the review contest is officially completely over. If you're hearing this, I have already announced the winner. I finally had the last 2 entries come in. They said they were coming in. They weren't showing up. They finally showed up last week. I have them in, and we will read those reviews on a future show. But I have them. I've locked it down. If you're hearing this, we'll be announcing the winner on Facebook in all the groups, and then maybe on a future show we may have to announce it if the winner doesn't stick their hand up. So, but thank you so much. Thank you so much for all the reviews. We had so many reviews now. We have almost 90 reviews for Warp 5. And thank you so much, listeners. It has helped us so much. I guarantee it has helped us. We have actually moved up in lists because of your help. So thank you so much.
I know, it's been great. We have like 3 5-star reviews out of those 90s. It's awesome.
Right.
Like a couple of people really like the show.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to ask for 5-star reviews, but man, I will so take them. I will take them in buckets. And those things, they came in like crazy. It was so awesome. So yeah, I'm going to be giving that. By the time you're hearing this, I will have already announced the winner, and I want to give those Blu-rays away so bad. And one of the things I learned from this contest is that iTunes reviews, they are not a very reliable place to hold your data or to keep your votes going or to even capture your votes. I found out it's a lot better for a short term, Brendan. If you're going to use this for Melodic Treks, I highly recommend you don't go big like I did and go to a whole year contest. You've got to break that thing down into like weeks or maybe a month or so, because iTunes is crazy sometimes with the way their ratings and the way the iTunes store, the way it actually displays them, they get lost and they're gone. And I wouldn't have even known they happened unless I hadn't have written them down months ago. So thank you so much, listeners. I surely appreciate it. I also want to thank Mike Morrison and he is a co-associate producer for Warp 5. And we have a new associate producer for Warp 5, Tim Cooper. Thank you so much. Mike and Tim are actually associate producers through Patreon. And if you'd like to be an associate producer or just help out Trek FM, you can go to patreon.com/TrekFM. That's patreon.com/TrekFM. And you can find out how you can get in on this and help us. Just a little bit. $1 a month helps us so much. $5 a month gets you to the patron zone, and you really get into some exclusive content, some early release content. Brandon has taken over being the Patreon manager, and Brandon, thank you so much. It has been, it just seems like it is just really growing the patron zone. So thank you so much.
Yeah, we really want to try and get something extra out there for, the people that helped to support the network. We really couldn't do it without you, so we want to try and give a little back. So we're trying to get early releases. The last episode 102, I think it was, that I did with Amy when we talked about acquisition and the Ferengi, we had that thing up there, I think it was like 10 days early or something, like 10 or 11 days early, because we're only releasing every other week here right now with Floyd and I being very busy, and we record both episodes in one night. So I had it done, edited early, and I threw it up there 11 days early for you guys. So it's pretty cool, and we're glad to do that. We're going to try and get some exclusive content for you. Earl Gray's been doing a very good job of that, getting some exclusive content for you guys out there. So and to get access to that, simply donate at the $5 a month level or higher. Just visit patreon.com/TrekFM, donate at the $5 a month level or higher, and you get access to Patron Zone, and there's early releases and exclusive content. It's great.
That's great. 11 days early, that's a record. I don't know if that's ever going to get beat. That's awesome. Yeah.
I'm going to try and get the next episode like 6 months early for you guys.
Wow. So we're going to have to talk to Daniels to get that done. We'll have to, some future guy stuff to help us on that. But yeah, thank you so much, Brandon, for taking care of the editing and the publishing of Warp 5. That it's really helped out so much. And also Tony Robinson for creating the very cool show art for our releases. If you'd like to get in touch with us here at Trek FM, you can always find us at trek.fm/contact and look in the sidebar on the show page, or go to speakpipe.com/trekfm. And we actually had a listener, Jay Scardina, sent a Warp 5 email. So this came through on one of the message buoys that we have here. Hoshi was able to download it. And it says, I just wanted to say how much I enjoy Warp 5. There aren't many Enterprise podcasts out there that keep the fandom going for this show. I just wanted to share a couple of my favorite Enterprise moments. So he's going back to the favorite moments that we did a few episodes ago. Mm-hmm. He says that when we see the crew in the original series costumes in A Mirror Darkly, when T'Pol pulls out the Velcro purse at the end of Carbon Creek, and he says that that's definitely one of his favorite episodes. He likes when Archer gives Trip a stern talking to at the end of Cogenitor. And spoiler for season 4, for those of you that are just going along with our retrospective, we haven't got to season 4 yet. So spoiler for this show that hasn't been on the air for a while. If you're waiting for the Blu-rays, okay, this is a spoiler, so you might want to pause it for a moment or fast forward or something. But when T'Pol kisses Trip before being married off to that Vulcan guy, you got to have a little romance in there. Later, pink skins. So thank you so much.
Pink skins? That's racist.
Or speciest. Yeah, that's...
Speciest.
Yeah, so Jay Scardina, I didn't realize you were Andorian. But thank you so much. I'm so glad that the signal gets this far away. Yeah.
What if he's Orion and it's like now crossed cultural barriers, this pink skin insult?
Oh, it's just... Yeah, everybody just calls us pink skins. Oh, great. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Jay. And again, listeners, if you want to get in touch with us, you can send us an email, or a voicemail would be so cool. You can also contact us through Twitter at TrekFM, Facebook at facebook.com/TrekFM. And as we mentioned several times, the Babel Conference. Type the Babel Conference, BABEL, into the search field on Facebook, or go to our website at trek.fm and click discussion on the menu bar. So that was a great talk with John about toys. I mean, I really didn't know. When I say I'm a noob, I really am a noob. I did not know anything about it. All I knew was I bought that 30th anniversary TOS figures, and my son bought a Diamond Select TOS phaser that looks better than the one that Shatner had. Or at least that's what I imagine. Like, I've really looked that thing over. It's amazing looking.
Noob.
Yes, I definitely am. I mean, that's not something usually people say, but I really am. So I'm not really the guy to ask. That's why I'm the guy that knows who to ask. That's why
I'll practice my Telluride insult. Your toy collection is terrible.
Really good. So, Brandon, if listeners want to hear you say you can only look at my figures but don't touch, how can they reach you?
You can find me on Twitter at Brandon Matella. You can find me on Facebook. I'm kind of taking a social media break right now. As the time of recording this right now, I haven't been on Facebook for about 3 days, or Twitter or anything really. So I might be hard to get a hold of, but if you add me as a friend, I'll accept you, and you can send me a direct message on Facebook. So that's a perfectly valid way to get a hold of me. So you can listen to me on Melodic Treks, which is all about the music of Star Trek. We got some new episodes of that coming out now, and I guess that's probably about it, hey?
Very good. And if you'd like to get in touch with me, you can find me in the Babel Conference, the Trek FM listeners page on Facebook. All right, Brandon. So, it looks like I need to go ahead and get my list started, and I need to go ahead and build another room on my house and hide it from my wife. Maybe, because I don't know how that's going to go over, but I got to get.
Well, you just need to make it like that ship on Future Tense, right?
Exactly.
So that your closet, when you open it up, it's actually bigger.
Exactly.
On the inside.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking of. There we go.
Just get rid of the burnt human.
Oh yeah. That'll just make room anyway for me. So very good. So Boomers, thank you so much for listening, and join us again next time for another episode of Warp 5.